Hello, everybody. We are just moments away from the first vice presidential debate between Tampon Tim Walz and JD Vance. If you're watching this on the replay, please give me a capital TR in the comments. You're watching Nez Nation Live. I'm your host, Professor Nez. This is a show where we do our own due diligence, our own qualitative and quantitative research to bring you the truth about what's happening in our country and beyond, everything that the fake woke mafia media won't share with you. Come on in, welcome. We're just minutes away from this thing starting, but I want to start off with this. Also, live viewers, replay viewers, because I love hearing from you guys. Let me know what city, what state, what country you're joining me from, because I always love hearing. Earl Shanner is from Syracuse, New York. Great to see you. Come on in. Come on in. Robert Winsman's in the house. Good to see you. Fantastic. Yeah, let me know where you're joining me from, because I always love hearing from you guys. Houston, Texas in the house. Okay. Keep letting me know. Maine in the house. I love it, from coast to coast. So we're just minutes away from the vice presidential debate, and I'm going to talk about what the rules are and who's moderating. So, according to CBS, that's who's going to be essentially hosting this vice presidential debate tonight. Excuse me. The two sides agreed that the candidates' microphones will stay on, so no muted microphones, unless unlike the two presidential debates. CBS says it reserves the right to shut off a hot mic when necessary. It's like they're toddlers, for crying out loud. It's so sad that in this day and age, this is what we're come to. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. There is no opening statement. Vance won on a virtual coin toss and will speak last. No audience will be present, and there will be no opening statements. It's supposed to be 90 minutes. And CBS Evening News anchor Nora O'Donnell and Margaret Brennan of CBS Face the Nation will be moderating. And so those are the rules right there. Now, why I think this is important. 13 minutes away. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. South Africa in the house. Fantastic. By the way, please tap that thumbs up. It's free. It takes you only a nanosecond, and it is not for me. It's not for vanity. This is a way for us to get our video pushed out to more people, because the algorithm takes that as a signal. Gallup, New Mexico. Lewis Spencer, welcome. Great to have you with us. Alabama. Trump and Vance, baby. You better believe it. You know, I posted this on X and in our members-only Discord. How in the world is anybody still, you can see these demographics up here, these analytics, grocery prices up 21%. I don't know about average hourly wages, which I live in California, and wages have gone up for minimum wage, and it's caused most businesses to shut down. Even, high profile corporate entities like In-N-Out and others have shut down. Newsom is awful for our state, and he's awful for our country. If this guy ever wins, we're in trouble. So, why I think this is so important tonight. We only got one presidential debate. I'm still shocked that anybody's still undecided. It's like, do you really want to vote for 4 more years of exorbitant cost, unable to buy a home, unable to afford rent, crime running rampant, illegal migrants everywhere, funding forever wars with our taxpayer dollars? Is this something that you really are undecided about? It just makes no sense. Either you have a really, really bad case of TDS, or there's something wrong with you, which both apply. Why this is important is that we only got one presidential debate, which I still think to this day, I can't believe anybody would think Kamala won, even though the bar has been set so low with vegetable in chief Joe Biden. The reason I think this is so significant is that there's so much pressure on Tampon Tim, because I truly believe JD Vance is the more accomplished, the more intelligent, the more capable, the more qualified. He's also a former Marine. He also came from nothing. He came from abject poverty. Hillbilly Elegy is a fantastic book, fantastic movie. There's a lot of pressure on both because there was only one presidential debate. And anybody who could really, really knock this one out of the park, which I truly believe that's going to be JD Vance. Oh, by the way, free poll. Let's do a poll. We got to do a poll for crying out loud. Hello. We for sure have to do a poll. Who's your pick tonight? Who's your pick tonight? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear who is your, and then I'll do, if you're watching this on Rumble or you're watching this on Facebook or you're watching this on Twitch, come on over to YouTube because I'm going to actually hold an actual poll here where I can, you guys can all participate. But I want to hear from you, replay viewers and live viewers. I want to hear from you. Who do you think is going to win this debate tonight? Susan says Vance. L. Jackson 1 says Vance. I'm seeing a lot of Vances. Any tampon Tims out there? Dottie says JD Vance. Trisha Gillen says Trump. He's not debating tonight, is he? I guess in a way he is, indirectly. Vance all the way. Yeah. Watching from the UK. Nice to see you, Jane. Welcome. She says JD. Okay, so I see a lot of... I'm going to also put a poll in the YouTube poll so you can actually vote and interact with the actual chat. We only got one presidential debate. And for some strange, bizarre reason, they said that Kamala won, which is absolutely asinine. I don't know what debate. I was there live. You were there with me. I thought Trump had all the most memorable lines. I thought Trump knocked it out of the park. It was obviously rigged. David Muir and Lindsay, whoever the hell her name is, I don't care. They obviously engaged in election interference because they never fact-checked Kamala once. And she was wrong about everything. She was wrong about Charlottesville. She was wrong about the border bill. She was wrong about crime. She was dead wrong about her asinine statement when she said, we don't have any combat soldier in an actual combat zone. And there's videos that went viral of soldiers saying, well, where are we then, for crying out loud? She doesn't know what she's doing, folks. She does not know what she's doing. She is a capital CH charlatan. So what I've been told, inside sources and my research has illuminated to me that Nora O'Donnell and whoever the next moderator is are supposed to, at least that's what we hear. I don't know if this is true. What's technical issues with this video? What do you mean, Marlene? Can everybody hear me okay? What technical issues? Are we having technical issues or you can see and hear me? Is it skipping or anything? Let me know in the comments. Mods? Where's my mods at? China Baby, is it skipping or something? Okay, good. Okay, I got confirmation from Laura. We're good. Okay, sorry about that. I apologize. I just want to make sure. There's always technical difficulties usually. Okay, I think they're going to cut to a commercial right now, so I'm going to not advertise for free for them. And so all the pressure is going to be on really Tampon Tim. All the pressure is on him. There was only one presidential debate. He's going to get fact-checked tonight. He's proven time and time again he has no clue what he's doing. He's unbelievably unqualified. Okay? And all the pressure is on him. I think he's going to buckle under the pressure. JD Vance is an accomplished professional debater, speaker, leader, senator, Marine, tough as nails. He is the perfect pick. This video of him showing real class that I posted just a few days ago, and then I posted a follow-up to it today of JD Vance and Primanti Brothers Sandwich Company. The way that he handled that was just phenomenal. If you haven't seen that video, go check that out. I just posted a new follow-up to it. Holy macadamia nut. It is amazing. I can't wait for you guys to see that and comment on that. And I just think there's so the entire world is going to be. First of all, nobody even knows who Tampon Tim is. Nobody knows who he is. He's got the worst track record. His family's come out against him. His constituents have come out against him. The citizens of Minnesota have come out against him. He supports putting tampons in boys' bathrooms. He supports putting tampons for men. He supports men playing in women's sports. He supports transgender surgeries paid by us to criminals who are let into this country for free. And he's destroyed Minnesota. He's destroyed the ethos, the credibility of that great state, the city of the Great Lakes, Minnesota. And I think we're going to see him really unravel tonight. That there may be a caveat to that, and the only caveat to that is that he has such low expectations that if this guy can just like Kamala had zero expectations. Everybody thought Trump was going to mop the floor with her, which I think wholeheartedly he did. But because you're comparing her to Biden, I mean, my dead cat would have fared better if you compare him to Biden, for crying out loud, vegetable in chief. And so the only thing that he may have going for him, which is the entire country has no idea other than he is a big, fat, giant weirdo with a capital W. We're 4 minutes and 45 seconds away, folks. He is a big, fat weirdo with a capital W who acts really, really strange, who does really, really weird things all the time. That's the only thing that he could possibly have going for him, which is there's no expectations. That's it. That's the only advantage, if I could call that an advantage, that he might have. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. Robert, I don't put that past him. I really don't. Yeah. Eric Ayers says he's the mayor of Minneapolis when it was burned down. That's when he was mayor. He's an idiot. If his brains were gas, he wouldn't have enough fuel to power a pissant's motorcycle. You know what, Eric? Tell me how you really think. Tell me what you really feel. Don't hold back. I love it. If you got your favorite beverage, grab your snack because we're in for a party here. We're in for a showdown, y'all. We are in for a major, major showdown tonight. I also want to give out a huge prayer. We went live earlier today. I want to extend my utmost thoughts and prayers to everyone involved in the Middle East. I just want to, on behalf of the United States of America, apologize. I think the only reason that this has happened is because we have the weakest, feeblest leadership that we've had since Jimmy Carter. It's literally Jimmy Carter 2.0. It's even, and like every sequel, it's worse than the original. I truly believe Jimmy Carter and Joe Biden are the two worst presidents, not in that order. Biden would be before Carter. The two worst presidents we've ever had in our beautiful, glorious constitutional republic. And the latest I've heard from Iran and Israel is that Israel's planning on making Iran pay the price, which does not sound good at all. So we've got a lot of problems. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And the really tragedy, the big tragedy is that all of this could have been avoided. The State Department said earlier, Peter Ortiz in the house. There you are, Peter. Do we have balls or do we have balls? Give me big giant balls in the comments because we need leadership with balls. If we had leadership with balls, this wouldn't be happening. Wanderlustful, good to see you. Wanderlustful is fantastic member of ours. Chuck Kreiner in the house. Good to see you, CK. Great to see you. Thank you, Joe. Oh, here we go. Is this it? Holy crap. They're early. Okay, hold on. Whoa.
We see the vice presidential candidates there. Tim Walz standing a lone man behind his lectern. Ed, give us your last thoughts as we watch here as JD Vance is off in the wings for the moment. Oh, there he is.
It's performance. That seems obvious, but no faux pas.
Oh, I thought they were
looking for a viral moment. That's what they'll be looking for tonight.
No handshake.
No, there was a handshake.
There you have Governor Walz. Appears
there was a handshake, you momo.
Notes, JD Vance
I saw a
the
handshake.
Same as our colleagues.
They were shaking hands before the cameras came.
That's right.
They were
well,
shaking
we have
hands.
The
Thank
vice
you for
presidential
correcting
debate coming up in a moment. It will be moderated by our own Nora O'Donnell and Margaret Brennan. Ohio Senator JD Vance and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz take the stage. Well, they've taken the stage, so stick with us here and join us also on our streaming channel, CBS News 24/7, for exclusive content you won't see anywhere else. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, so they might do one more commercial break. Are they going to actually do it?
Tonight, with just over a
Here we go,
month to
guys. Let me know how the audio is.
And only meeting between the two men who hope to become vice president of the United States. Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota and Republican Senator JD Vance of Ohio.
Now, this is likely the final debate of this election cycle, and voting is already underway in 20 states. CBS News polling shows this remains a race either presidential candidate could win. The CBS News vice presidential debate starts now.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Take this country back.
Come on, JD. Show them who's boss. Show them who's boss,
We're gonna turn
JD.
this whole country red with President Donald J. Trump's leadership.
Let's go, America. Let's get our country back.
Little journey. Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States.
Oh, boo.
This is a CBS News special, live from CBS News headquarters in New York. America decides the vice presidential debate.
Good evening. I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News vice presidential debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator JD Vance, tonight meeting for the first time.
I'm Margaret Brennan. In order to have a thoughtful and civil debate, these are the rules that both campaigns have agreed to. Questions will be directed at one candidate who will have 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further points, with an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other.
CBS News reserves the right to mute the candidates' microphones to maintain decorum.
I already hate these two.
We have not shared the questions or topics with the campaign.
Let me know in the comments, do you think these moderators will be fair?
Governor, Senator, thank you for joining us.
Okay, here we go.
Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back,
He is
fundamental,
nervous.
and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership.
Terrible.
We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the vice president said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit, because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me. And she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. Woo! And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence.
Come on,
People
here we
were
go.
afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration.
There you go.
What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine.
There you go.
Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris.
Hello, JD.
Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
That's how you do it.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to.
That's how you do it.
Margaret, thank you. Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce?
Oh, it's already rigged. It's already rigged.
Change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then of course afterwards to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job. And I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say, Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane.
And you're a
my
moron.
heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors. If we work together on these emergency management, governors know no partisanship. They work together to so all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. the federal government comes in, makes sure they're there to that we recover. But we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in.
Oh, you're so
What
full
we've
of
seen
crap.
out of the Harris
Where's the fact check?
administration now, the Biden-Harris administration,
God,
is
you're
we've
awful.
seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year
My
droughts,
farmers.
500-year floods.
You've never met a
back to back.
farmer in your
But
life.
what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest
full of
corn,
it.
I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to
He's a
continue to move
weirdo,
forward
man.
that climate change is real.
He's
Reducing
a
our
weirdo.
impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what
His mouth
absolutely
is
makes
dry.
sense.
He's really
And then we
nervous.
start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond
come you
there.
don't
The governor
fact check him,
mentioned
Nora?
that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even
Look at his
billions
weird
of dollars
face.
of American taxpayer
weird.
money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United
are, in
States of
Minnesota.
America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Come on,
Natural
JD.
gas, we
Good
got to
job,
invest
JD.
more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by
your
the
time
climate.
is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil, but the folks know, and like I said again,
I have
these are
farmers.
not liberal folks. These are not folks that are
My
Green New Deal
farmers.
folks. These are farmers
You're
that
so
have been
full of
drought
crap.
one year, massive flooding the next year. They
Destroying
understand
my
that
country.
it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to
Nobody's
Mar-a-Lago,
saying that.
say, give me money for my campaign, and I'll let you do whatever you want.
Nobody
We can
said
be
that.
smarter about that. And an all above energy policy is exactly
Fact
what she's doing,
check this
creating
moron.
those jobs right here.
Governor, your
Fact
time is
check
up.
him.
The overwhelming consensus among scientists
He
is that
never
the
said
Earth's
that.
climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico
That they
border
created.
consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example,
it's
would
so
you deport
rigged.
parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies.
Correct.
94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules?
How come you don't fact check Vance?
Children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history.
Oh, you're so
30% decrease in Ohio, but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state, a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this.
So how are you going to do it?
And that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce.
You
That's
denied
most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration.
Here we go with the border bill.
It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative,
you don't
but he's
need
a man of principle, wants to get
Momo.
it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here.
You don't
These are
need
the
a
experts.
bill. You can do
And
it
the
right
Chamber of
now.
Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents. Detection for drugs.
How much did you give the
DOJ
Ukraine?
money to speed up.
Let's see if they
these,
fact check him.
The adjudications on this.
How
Just
much
what
are you going to
America
give the
wants.
Ukraine in that bill?
But as soon as
Momo?
I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no. Told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign
It's Trump's
issue.
fault, of
It
course.
gives him what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch.
That's
So
BS.
look, we have the options to do this.
Fact check
Donald
him.
Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall. And Mexico
And then
will pay
you
for it.
destroyed it.
Less than 2% of that wall got built, and
Because of
Mexico didn't
you.
pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do.
he's such
As
a
far as the
weirdo.
deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator,
So
the
full of
question
crap.
was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country.
Why don't
And
you
we know
fact
that they
check
use children as
tampon?
drug mules, and it is a disgrace. and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president
Senator,
again.
your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%,
They haven't fact-checked
support
tampon
mass
once.
deportations?
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the
Oh
issue
my
on
God.
this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this. And Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true. Don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve
You're
this
so
if
full of
we
crap.
didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
You're a moron.
Tim,
Governor,
Governor,
your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1
tampon.
minute, but let me just ask you the question first.
You're an effing
The
moron.
governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said
You
repeatedly
don't need a
that
bill.
Donald Trump
That's
would,
BS.
through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the
It's 3
changes
against
that
1.
you would
Totally
actually
rigged.
want
3
to
against 1.
implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been. And it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico, you've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know,
Because
American
people
principles.
are dying, you
I don't talk
moron.
about my faith a lot.
You're letting
but
thugs
Matthew
in.
25:40 talks about
That's
to the
why
least
we're
amongst
talking.
us
It's
you do
your
unto me.
fault.
I
We
think
don't
that's
want you running
true
our
of
country.
most Americans. They simply
Oh, I'm
want
getting so
order to it.
pissed off.
This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it, and it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor.
You're a
And just to
moron.
clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status.
Right.
temporary protected
Oh, here we go.
status.
Here we go.
but
Thank you.
Senator, we have so
first-
much
Oh,
to
yeah,
get
we're going
to.
to cut you
Margaret,
off,
I think it's
Senator. You
important
son of
We're
a
gonna turn out of
the
the
debate-
economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules
You're so
were that
full
you
of
guys
it.
weren't going to
We're-
fact check. And since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal
JD.
migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open
Look
border
at Tim's
law.
ugly ass
That is
face.
not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That
Thank
is
you,
the
Senator.
facilitation of illegal immigration,
Yeah.
Margaret, by
Yeah.
Thank
our
you,
They wanna
Senator,
hide it.
for
They wanna cover it
describing
up.
the legal
and
process.
those laws-
We have
Kamala
so much
Harris
to get
opened up
to,
that
Senator.
pathway.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much-
the books since 1990.
Oh,
Thank you, gentlemen.
Oh, you're going to let him
We
talk.
wanna have-
Oh, you're
Has
going to
not
let
been on the books.
Tampon talk. You guys are a sham.
Gentlemen,
Screw you,
the audience
Laura.
can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much
Oh,
we
you're
want to get
so
to.
full
Thank
of
you for
crap.
explaining the legal process. Nora?
Thank
It's
you,
3
Margaret.
against 1. It's totally
The
rigged.
economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan. So let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there
Same
listening
BS
tonight, you're
story.
hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm gonna give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it. It would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala
Doesn't it
Harris
look
has
like
said
he's
to do
reading
the
a
things she wants to
teleprompter?
do. We'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best. More people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer. A lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies. And what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%. Open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom, because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle class and working class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs.
Is this guy for real?
That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts. Said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years? In the last year,
that's the tax code,
that's
you
what's
moron.
wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop. And we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your time is up. Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics show that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here, because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like
Cook
to
that
not be able to
tampon.
afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
There
I
you
hope we have
go.
a conversation on healthcare then.
Senator, Governor,
Please.
thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many
You are the
topics.
worst
but right now, I
moderators.
want to
You're
talk about
worse than David
personal
Muir.
qualifications.
Shut up.
The vice president is often
You're
the
worse.
last voice the president hears
Election
before
interference.
making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong
doesn't have
Kong
any.
during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of
And he lied.
1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until
You
August
lying
of that
sack.
year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Why did you lie,
Yeah, well, and to
tampon?
the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska,
What does that
town
have
of
to do with
400,
anything?
town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come
Answer
on, and
the
I'm proud of that
question.
service.
Why'd you lie?
I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the
doing the same
opportunity
thing
in the
Kamala
summer of
did.
'89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers.
Oh my
and
God,
we would
he's
go
pulling
back
a
and forth to
Kamala.
China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've
What
tried
is
to do
that?
the best
You're not
I
answering
can,
the
but I've
question.
not been perfect. And I'm
Why
a
did you
knucklehead
lie?
at times, but it's always
Nobody
been
cares
about
that you're from the
Those
middle
same
class.
people elected me to Congress for 12 years.
You're a
And in
liar.
Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And
Answer
then
the
the people of
question,
Minnesota
moron.
were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this
You're
right.
a
I will
lying ass
say more than
dog.
anything,
You're an LAB.
many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric.
Oh, shit.
But being there, the impact it
Lying-
made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be
Answer the
praising
question.
Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My
Answer the
commitment, whether it be
question,
through teaching,
moron.
which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
You didn't answer the question.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the
No, just-
discrepancy?
All I said on this was is I got there that summer and missed
Can't
on
explain
this.
it.
So
You're a
I will
liar.
just, that's what I've said.
You're a liar. You're a liar.
So I was in Hong Kong and China
You're a
during the
moron.
democracy protest.
You're a moron and a liar.
And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Holy crap. I can't believe
Thank
it.
you, Governor. Senator Vance, in 2016, you called your running mate, Donald Trump, unfit for the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's Hitler. I know you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in
here we go.
2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, he needs to hear, and not just the advice he wants to hear. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories
Like
that
so
turned out
many
to be
people.
dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're not probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing.
Did he just pick his nose?
A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the
Trump is not against IVF.
What's right for Texas might not be right
moron.
for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about healthcare. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in healthcare for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
Of course not.
Nor certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator.
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think,
That's
whether
not
you're
true.
pro-choice or
That's not how the law
pro-abortion,
is.
that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong about?
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But
this,
how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting engaged, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last
Get him,
debate.
JD.
But
No,
the
it
point
wasn't.
on this is there's
You're
a
a
continuation
moron,
of these
Tampon.
guys
You're
to
a
try and
moron.
tell women or to get involved. I
Why'd
use
you
this
lie
line on this,
about
just
Tiananmen
mind your own
Square, you
business
moron?
on this. Things work best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So they're taking a short break right now. I cannot believe that they're doing it again. They said they were going to fact check. They said that they were going to push back. They have not fact checked once. He brings up the same garbage that Kamala brought up in the debate against Trump. He brings up the border bill. Trump ruined it. It's Trump's fault. I mean, you could almost sense, I'm telling you right now, you could almost sense Obama, Clinton just coaching this absolute moron. If they bring up the border, here's what you're going to say. It was Trump's fault. We tried to pass a comprehensive border. That is a bold-faced lie, my fellow Americans. It was not a border bill. It was a Ukraine bill. The stipulation was we want more funds transferred to the border. There was over $60 billion, $100 billion allocated towards Ukraine and only like 10, 20 billion for the border. It wasn't a border bill. It was a Ukraine bill, and essentially the border, American safety, was just an index number, an addendum. And they keep bringing up this border bill and that Trump killed it. He didn't do anything of the sort. As a matter of fact, the constituents were against it. The people that Speaker Mike Johnson and others represent, okay, we were against it because we don't want another penny going towards this forever war. The Middle East is in chaos. Russia and Ukraine is in chaos. It's a travesty. What do you guys think? Who's winning so far? Let me know in the comments. Who do you think's doing a good job? I mean, it's just unbelievable. And then he just went on and on. I grew up in a middle-class family. I mean, the coup de grace, the absolute apex of this entire travesty called Tampon Tim, is he didn't answer the question when the moderator asked, why did you lie about being in Tiananmen Square in China when you were in Nebraska? And he says, well, I grew up he's such a weirdo. He's such an effing weirdo. Well, I grew up in a middle-class family. I'm a weirdo. I want tampons in boys' bathrooms. And, I believe in migrants should all take over American jobs. And we should give migrants free health care. He's an effing weirdo. He's a weirdo, capital W weirdo. Oh my God, it drives me crazy. I grew up in a middle-class family, just like Kamala. Doesn't answer the question at all. At all. It's an absolute travesty. And there was zero pushback. I don't know why JD didn't say, dude, you didn't answer the question, bro. Why did you lie? How can you call yourself a leader? How can you call yourself vice president of the United States when you lie time and time again? I mean, he is a bull. It's this whole radical Lenin Marxist communist party. They just lie about everything. They literally lie about everything. It makes me sick to my stomach. It should make you sick to your stomach. These guys have, I mean, it's been how many years? You've had control over the government 12 of the last 16 years. When are you going to stop blaming Trump? When? When is it going to end? Well, economy, during the pandemic, Trump ruined the economy. No, he didn't, you lying-ass dog. He didn't have anything to do. As a matter of fact, the economy was doing amazing. Everybody was prosperous until you and your sycophants. Okay, here we go. Oh, I get so angry. It makes me so angry.
Welcome back to the CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. We want to turn now to America's gun violence epidemic. The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90%, and some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartel. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment.
She doesn't even know how to hold a gun, you liar.
Kids to figure
You
this out.
lie.
In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it. And here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go? When we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills. They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Is okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools, we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but it only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was the NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car.
He became
so
friends with school shooters?
Practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues, making sure folks have health care and all that. But I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns. And there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. We have, first, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the vice president is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, one of the certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance,
Did anybody
as far as
understand
your
that?
campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising? And what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim.
You don't need a bill, you
million illegal
moron.
aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens if you lower energy prices? As Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill. One of the biggest drivers of housing costs, aside from illegal immigration, is, think about it. If a truck driver's paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where, Governor, we will get to you in a moment, but Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in.
Well, of course, that's not true. And again, you have the facts. I guess we agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not
You're
trying
a
to find a solution.
complete
I was
idiot.
going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important
You
pieces
just
of
said
land. Now, Minnesota
illegal
doesn't have a
crossings
lot
are
of federal lands.
lower
I know
than
in the
4
western
years
part
ago.
of
Can
the
you
country
believe this?
we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example.
Border Patrol
So
Union
the issue is I
endorsed
don't
Trump.
understand the
Why
federal
do you think
lands
he
issue
did- they did
unless
that?
we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about
this
our
guy
national
is a
parks and our
PhD in
federal
lying.
lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect.
You're a
They're there for a
moron.
reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, you Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor,
Where's the
your
study?
time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, that in some cases, many of those are local, many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis, I can tell. But Nora?
Thank you.
Oh,
One of the top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked about replacing the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, "I have concepts of a plan." Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. I think it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill, but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think this is an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care.
You're such
it's
a
not
weirdo,
perfect,
Tim.
of course, and there's so much more that we can do.
Look at
but
that
I think
weird,
that Donald Trump has
deranged look.
earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
I think Tim is wearing a tampon.
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, More people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept, because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have
That's a
not yet
bunch of
explained
malarkey.
how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened, and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight, is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher, and he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then
So
what
you
happens
think the
is
individual mandate's a good idea?
you shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret?
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of
Go ahead,
time. We have a
Laura.
number of subjects to discuss. Margaret?
Let's talk about families.
Yeah, of
in
course. Anytime you want to
America.
fact check tampon, we're going to cut to a
There is a
commercial.
child care crisis
Sure.
in this
Moderators,
country,
eat
and
it.
the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national
I mean,
paid
this
leave
is such a
program for new
rigged
parents.
debate.
Governor Walz,
This is
you've
election
said that if
interference.
Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family and medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, you And I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start. The family works better. We stay in their employers. We get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota, and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue. Those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some cases, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up.
I think he's having a cognitive decline.
He
can't remember his talking points
when it works for all of us. And so
he's having a
paid
Biden
medical
moment.
leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of childcare model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with childcare. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide childcare in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote childcare because, look, it is unacceptable. And, you know, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on childcare as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families, cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, childcare options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Can you clarify how that will solve the childcare shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the child care shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, your ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's 5,000 or 6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy is growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results?
There's no way these guys can win.
Well, Laura, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square. And that's all I've said. And that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. And now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues. And that, to me, is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here. And I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator. But
me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he did. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election.
Don't talk about kids, you weirdo.
And then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
He's full of it.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement. But this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
You're such a weirdo.
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the
threatening or
power
hate
of
speech.
government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the
masks.
governor does
That's
have the
not
floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to
Please.
respond to you.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, of course he
I don't run
does.
Facebook.
Of
What I
course
do
he
know
does.
is I
You don't
see
give
a
him any
candidate out
chance.
there who refused,
You're going
and
to
now
give
again,
Tampon
and this, I'm pretty
moron a
shocked by this.
chance.
He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not.
And he
it's
left,
not
you
anything
idiot.
anher other
Talk about
than
the
in
border. Talk
Donald
about
Trump's
how you're
world. Because
ruining our
look,
country.
when Mike Pence made
He
that
left,
decision
Momo.
to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is, where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what
You're
we
a
would
creep.
do. So America,
Your
I
face
think you've
is
got
creepy.
a really clear choice on this election.
You don't
of
know what the
who's gonna
hell you're
honor that
talking about.
democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time
Oh, you're
is up.
such a
Thank
creep.
you,
What about
gentlemen.
JD? Can he
We will
respond?
be
Of
right back
course
with
not.
both of our
Of course
candidates.
he
The
can.
CBS News vice presidential debate
I mean,
continues.
it's an absolute farce. It's just an absolute farce. He left the White House. This is a complete farce. He left. They just tiptoe. That's a stupid question. The peaceful transfer of power. And by the way, when the January, all that footage of the rioters, etc., I was very, very opposed to that, because I believe in our Constitution. I believe in due process. I believe in the values and ideals. But now there's been so much crap that's come out. There's been so much evidence to combat. They lied about what Trump said. They lied about January 6th. They lied about Nancy Pelosi, who was essentially the facilitator of January 6th. And now they don't want to talk about anything real. They don't want to talk about anything real. They don't want to talk about the fact that Americans can't afford their groceries. They don't want to talk about the fact that Americans can't afford their energy bills. We can't get new homes. They're letting in millions and millions and millions of illegal migrant criminals. Laken Riley comes to mind. They're killing Americans. And by the way, the Border Patrol Union, I want to show you this. The Border Patrol Union just posted this because they want to lie about everything. This is the official page of the Border Patrol, and I want to share this with you. Look at this. Look at this. This guy is such an absolute liar. Look at this. Look at this right here. This is the Border Patrol. They have just posted this on X. By the way, follow me on X. And they have said the border experts want real Donald Trump to be president so that the border can be secured without compromise. So he keeps talking about a bill, pass the bill. Why don't you pass the bill? He keeps talking about a bill. They don't need a bill. This guy is a complete bold-faced charlatan, lion-ass dog. Give me some capital LADs in the chat right now, because that's exactly what Kamala is. That's exactly what this weirdo, he's a weirdo. I mean, what is this weirdo stuff that he keeps doing? I mean, he is an absolute weirdo. What's with these faces? Oh, I don't. Oh, I make friends with school shooters. I'm a high school football coach. Mr. Waltz, excuse me. Why did you lie about being in Tiananmen Square when you were clearly in Nebraska? Why did you lie about that? Why did you lie about having to get your stomach pumped due to the fact that you somehow have a crazy, really, really weird relationship with horses. I'm a family guy. First of all, I grew up in a middle-class family. That's what I did. I mean, he is a complete deranged lunatic. You want that guy negotiating with Xi Jinping? You want that guy negotiating with Vladimir Putin? You want that guy negotiating with Kim Jong-un? With UK, with Africa, with Venezuela, with Brazil? Are you kidding me? This is an absolute travesty, is what it is. And the moderators are complicit. It's just unbelievable. And the moderators are totally complicit. It is just an absolute travesty. So, a lot of people on X are saying, Nez, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the debate. It's very simple. It's 3 against 1 as usual. The biggest reason that there's not going to be another presidential debate is because Kamala's a scared little kitty cat. She's a scared chicken, just like Tampon Tim is a scared chicken when they don't get the answers ahead of time, when they don't get their beautifully advantageous background and context and infrastructure like ABC, CBS, David Muir, Nora O'Donnell, when they don't get their little advantage, their home court advantage, they run like scared little weasels. Why don't you do a debate on Fox? No, they won't do that. All right, here we go.
Welcome back to the CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. It is now time for the closing statement. Senator Vance won the virtual coin toss and elected to go last. So, Governor Walz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Senator Vance. Thank you to CBS News. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look,
you're
the
a
support of the
moron.
democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie
You're just a
Sanders to
goofy
Dick
dummy.
Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you that that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something, not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Guess what?
Governor
You don't
Walz,
have it, moron.
Thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with Kamala because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say, I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell. And a reminder, there are just 35 days until Election Day. Please get out and vote. And for all of us here at CBS News, thank you and good night.
You guys are traitors. You're absolute traitors is who you are. Okay, I put a poll on YouTube, but I want to hear from you. Who did you think won the debate tonight? We've got Tampon Tim or JD Vance. So just give me a T for Tampon Tim or a JD for JD Vance. I would love to hear who you guys thought made the strongest points. Who did you think was more clear-headed, actually spoke, and did you get a sense of which one did you think actually cares more about the United States of America? Clearly, I think JD Vance 100% knocked it out of the park. I think he talked about the issues that Americans care about the most. He talked about the fact he stuck to the record. What I think JD did really well was he stuck to the track record of the last 4 years of this abysmal administration. It was 3-1. There's no doubt about it. It was 3-1. They said they were going to fact check, and they didn't fact check once. I am kind of impressed that, Tampon Tim didn't bring up Charlottesville. He didn't bring up, some of the other things have been taken out of context, but he did bring up the border bill, which is complete BS. He did bring up January 6th, which was complete BS. He did bring up, the economy, saying that it was Donald Trump who created the economy, which is complete BS, created inflation, complete BS. So he lied about everything. Nora O'Donnell and whoever the other lady's name is, I can't remember, did not fact check once. 35 days away, my fellow Americans. 35 days away. Also, I'd love to ask this too. Did anything tonight change your mind? Did anything tonight that you heard, I'm seeing a lot of JD Vances, did anything that you heard tonight change your mind about who you're going to vote for? Were you, I said this on my X. By the way, follow me on X. Yes, exactly. I couldn't agree more with Lady Vet. The comments are going too fast. I can't even click on your comment. But Lady Vet said, vote early and in person. Yes. Vote now. Vote now. If you got your mail-in ballot, vote now. But I would love to hear if anything any of these vice presidential candidates said actually swayed or convinced your opinion to go this way or that way. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Let me just say this really quickly. I posted this on X. If you're undecided by now, you really haven't been engaged in what I like to call your sovereignty, which is critical thinking. If you're undecided by now, if you're still not sure after you get your electric bill, after you get your gas bill, after you try to take your kids on vacation, after you try to go out to dinner, after you try to have some kind of fun and leisure time, and you're not living paycheck to paycheck, which 85 to 90% of Americans are. If you're undecided about illegal migrant criminals pouring in like a deluge, like an absolute flood of illegal cartel members, thugs taking over cities, seizing economies, seizing jobs. If you're still undecided after what happened today in Iran, in Israel, You're still undecided. And the vegetable in chief saying, well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We're going to figure it out. I told Iran, don't. I told Iran, don't. I said, don't. I don't know why they didn't listen. I said, don't. I said it pretty strongly. I thought I was strong when I said it. You're still undecided? I find that very irritating, to put it mildly, if you're still undecided. So let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. I want to give some shout outs to all of the people who became new members. And I want to say this too. Grandpa Barney, it is fantastic to have you here. Let me say this for all the new members. And let me say this for everybody who's thinking about joining right now. Not only do you get access and automatic registration to our live stream giveaway. I've given away thousands of dollars in Amazon gift cards, hats, mugs, shirts, hoodies, you name it. Cash. We've just passed 360,000 subscribers. We're going to do another live stream giveaway. When, Nez? When? You got to sign up for our free newsletter. It's in the description in the show notes. Follow me on X. It's in the pinned comment. I will let you know. I will always let you know. But some of them happen randomly, so you got to join us. If you sign up for our free newsletter and you turn on the bell notification, you'll always be notified. So automatic registration for the live stream giveaways. You get a badge next to your name. You get special privileges in the comments, special shout outs during the live stream. Excuse me. I think I'm about to sneeze. You also get access to our members-only Discord, which is the most thriving, engaging community on planet Earth. I'm in there too. We talk about all sorts of things. We share all sorts of things that we can't share anywhere else. You also get top priority comments, responses, and top priority live Q&A when we have guests on our show. Never mind the fact that you're supporting the best independent grassroots media organization who has one aim: to make our country come back to what it was when we were raised in this beautiful country, when we were kids, when we were young, not that very long ago. The America we grew up in. The aim of this channel is to get our country back and to share the objective truth. I do my own due diligence. My wife is the most brilliant researcher on the planet. We do our own quantitative and qualitative research. Everything that the fake woke mafia media never shares with you, you'll get that here only. And I have an advantage that every other channel doesn't have. I've worked with these people. I know Kamala. I know Comrade. She's a bad person, not a good person at all. Probably, quite frankly, the worst person that was ever born. I don't like her one bit. She lies. Boy, is she a liar. How do you like my Trump impression? I am getting better and better and better. So think about becoming a new member. My mods will share a link on how to join. It's also just click the join button. There's a big fat join button down there. It behooves you to become a new member. And if you want to know, hey, Nez, where do I get access to the members only Discord? There's a community tab post on our YouTube channel. It's just for members only, and it has a link to the Discord. Also contact Laura Tilford. She's in the chat, as well as Jim Barron. Thank you, John Lies, for gifting one membership. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. China Baby Lisa, thank you so much for gifting 10 Professor Nez memberships. You rock, China Baby. You're amazing. Love you, girl. You're fantastic. She'll tell you about the amazing Discord. She's in there a lot. Thank you so much, China Baby. You are numero uno. Arikios, thank you for the $5 super chat. I get some fatigue libs. Have about Trump. I'm glad there's another strong leader for Republicans. Hoping Vance does well. Biden makes Carter look like JFK. Exactly. Thank you, Arikios. Jim Barron, my man JB, gifts one Professor Nez membership. You rock, JB. Thank you so much. We love going live. And here's the truth about me. Ask anybody who's in the chat right now who's been to our live stream getaways. We have so much fun. We have so much fun in our live stream giveaways, and I love to do it. I love to give away prizes, money, cash. I love it. There's a secret itty bitty molecule inside my chest There's been this secret little itty bitty part of me that's always dreamed. I don't know why. I kind of feel bad even saying it out loud, but there's just a small, tiny part of Nez that always wanted to be a game show host. I don't know why. So it's sort of a win-win. You guys get amazing prizes, and I get to fulfill a long-lost childhood dream. Robbie Reeder, thank you so much for the $1.99 super chat. Tear him up, Vance. Tear him up. That's right. Thank you, Robbie. Gloria Van Ravensway. My prayers to people of Israel. May God be with them and look out for them now, always. That is including the United States also. Dear God up in heaven, please look out for those who are victims of the terrible, terrible, egregious war that is caused by this awful, awful administration's weak, feeble leadership. Dear Lord, please, God, protect them, guide them, hold them in your arms, give them strength, bless them, and help them in every way, shape, and form that you can. Please, God. Amen. God bless. Nez, are you Catholic? No, but I do it all. I just do it because it feels right. It just feels natural. I just do it. I'm not Catholic. I'm not religious. I believe in God, but I'm not religious. I do love the Bible, though. I read the Bible. Gloria Van Ravensway, thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. That's awesome. Thank you. Lynn Morrison, thank you so much for the $5 super sticker. Lynn, great to see you. Dale Toledo, thank you so much for the $4.99 super chat. I lost my youngest daughter to a fentanyl overdose on June 14th. I am so sorry. Dale Toledo, I'm giving you another prayer as well. Dear God, please, God, bless Dale Toledo, help Dale Toledo, give her healing. There's nothing on earth that anybody can compare. I have 2 kids. My daughter's 11. My son is almost 13. I can't even imagine. I'm so sorry. Please, God bless Dale Toledo. I'm so sorry, Dale Toledo. I have nothing to say other than that. Thank you. Lynn Morrison, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Vance VP, November 5th. Exactly. Sharon Rose, welcome. I hope you were listening to all the beautiful benefits and amenities. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome. It is awesome to have you. Patrast 100. Thank you so much for the $4.99 super chat. Tim's forehead for rent. Yeah, there should be a for rent sign there. Tim's immediate family are voting for Trump. Exactly. What does that tell you? His entire family is voting for Trump. If anyone knows tampons pass, it's his family. Go vote and inform, or it won't matter. Patrast, I love you. Well said. Yanisa Tucker. Yanisa, thank you so much, Yanisa. Great to see you for the $1.99 super chat. The Most High will prevail. All praise be to the Most High. Absolutely. JB, the man, the myth, the legend. Jim Barron, thank you so much, sir. I hope you're doing fantastic. I have to take a shower after watching that ugly performance by Tim Walz, Tampon Tim. Thank you, Jim. You are the best. Goddess of Truth, thank you for the $5 super chat. Vance is making Tampon Tim. You're absolutely right. I think he kicked his butt. I still want to hear from you. Bernie Cifoletti, what am I, a schlemiel? Who in their right mind thinks 9-month and partial birth abortions aren't flat out? Exactly. Thank you, Bernie, for the $5 super chat. It's ridiculous. Chow Studios. Thank you so much, Chow Studios, for the $10 super chat. Keep it up. Good job. Make culture. I love that. Keep it up. Good job. That should be a good bumper sticker. Keep it up. Good job. Make culture. I love that. BBSC, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Is it just me, or does Waltz look like a demonic Don Rickles? And I love Don Rickles, too. He's my favorite of all time. My goodness, that is a great description. But I would never dare compare him to Don Rickles. I would never dare defame Don Rickles like that. But he does. If there was an ugly, grotesque, demonic beast, lost, goofball, weirdo version of Don Rickles, you're right. I think you're onto something. Sherry Fennel, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. I need a little water. Thank you so much. I had Obamacare. They said they were only going to pay $1,900 on my hospital bill. I wound up owing over $400,000. Tim can KMA kiss my. I couldn't agree more, Sherry. Thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Fletch, Vance knocked it out of the park. Thank you for the $3 super chat. You are correct, Fletch. Peter Ortiz gives 5 Professor Nez memberships. Love you, Peter, the PO, who's another man, myth, and legend. So fantastic to have you here. Welcome, Peter. It's always great to see you. SK Abstract Art, thank you so much for gifting 1 Professor Nez membership. It is fantastic to see you. MG Mountain Goddess gifted 5 Professor Nez memberships. Love you, MG. You're terrific. You're phenomenal. I'm so happy you're with us. Gloria Van Ravensway, thank you so much for the $3 super sticker. Gloria, you're terrific. You get a blow. You get a kiss from Professor Nez. Thank you. Goddess of Truth, thank you so much. $5 super chats. Do you ever do call-in members only live streams? I'm a new member. I'm going to do that as well. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Goddess of Truth. We do a lot of members only live streams with giveaways, especially, but I'm thinking about doing that too. We'll do some hangouts. We got so much planned for this channel. You have no idea. Peter Ortiz, another 5. Peter, you're the man. Thank you so much, sir. God bless you, Peter Ortiz. In North Dakota, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter Ortiz has been a long-time member. He is the givingest giving giver. And I just love you, Peter. Peter, you're fantastic. We got to get our country back. Thank you, P.O. Josh, $2 super chat. Take off your glasses. Why? I can't see anything without them. Why, Josh? That sounds like a creepy ask right there. I don't know why. Patriot Rob, I feel a little bit of Tampon Tim vibes there. You're scaring me, Josh. Please prove me wrong. Patriot Rob with the $5 super chat. I wish JD would have finished with these moderators. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Patriot Rob. I completely agree. And last but not least, of course, Tijuana border jumpers in the house. Thanks for streaming America First. You got it, brother. Thank you so much for being here. So again, we go live all the time. Please, before you leave, tap the thumbs up because it only takes you a nanosecond and it's free. It is way past my bedtime. I'm sure it's way past your bedtime. And so I just want to say thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Subscribe, hit the bell notification. Make sure you sign up for our free newsletter. It's in the description and show notes. In the pinned comment is our X account. You got to follow me on X because I post a lot of stuff that I can't post anywhere else. So please, please, please make sure you hang out. I can't wait. Love you guys so, so much. 35 days away. This is going to be the most important month of this channel's history, October. We are in Q4. It is October 1st as of this recording, and we've got 34 days left until the most important day of our lives as American citizens. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to work 600x harder this month to bring you the truth. So stay tuned. We got so much planned. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night. As always, may God bless you and may God bless